Why might it make sense to preserve connectomes? Well, let's do an analogy 50 years ago. Let's say that it's the 60s and there's a species that's about to go extinct. I think you could put together a very powerful argument that it's important to preserve the DNA of that species, that maybe you'll be able to do something with it one day, like scan the entire genome. And we knew in the 60s that DNA is the recipe for life, and we knew that we could preserve DNA. If you preserve these samples, you can bring a criticism against it saying it would cost $1 trillion and it'd take 100,000 years to scan this genome. And I think you could argue against it saying, well, we can already scan a little bit of DNA, and biology has no problem scanning an entire genome in 20 minutes and in fact replicating it. So it clearly can be done. You're not going to succeed in doing that in the 60s. The technology doesn't exist. But wait 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, you can do it today for $1,000 and it takes a day. You have the same argument today. Could you scan a human connectome? Absolutely not. That would be $1 trillion. It would take 100,000 years. But let's preserve them, and let's demonstrate we can preserve long-term memory with the idea that in the future the technology will be up to the task. The important thing is this idea of preserving the long-term memories, preserving the wisdom of people. There's this idea of the living memory of humanity. Is there someone who's alive you can go to that was there, that experienced these historical events? And we don't have much living memory. Like World War I, for example, the last person that fought in that war died in 2012. So World War I isn't in the living memory anymore. There's no one you can go to talk about that experience firsthand. We lose a lot going from having someone who was there versus reading about it in a history textbook.
Today, we want to understand what it was like to be humans in the past. And so we have entire professions who sift through trash heaps, trying to get clues on what it was to be human then. The actual cognitive structures of human thought, if we can successfully save them today, I think that in the future, scientists and archaeologists will look through that to try and understand what were they thinking.
I see it as an extension of writing. Before we had writing, I could tell you a story and you could remember it and maybe tell it to the next generation, and that's how the information could live on. And it unlocked all of this potential to have connection to the last generations. But writing is this tiny little sliver of what a person is.
So there is this book called The Guardian of All Things, The Epic Story of Human Memory is the subtitle, by Michael Malone. And he argues that every advance in memory, in our ability to preserve useful aspects of our past and present, has accompanied a significant set of leaps in civilization, in all the things that we care about our society, the higher aspects of our society, the more adaptive aspects. So he starts with oral language and says, we're having this tribal culture and we kind of gain a responsibility to pass on the best of those stories. And that's an externalization of memory, of individual experience into this public space. And it has a life of its own. It's jumping from brain to brain. It's no longer in an individual brain. Then we figure out how to codify that and put it into symbols. And now we gain a responsibility to pass on the best of those symbols. Recording of experiences through phonographs and film and video. And then we can actually take some of our ability to compute and offload it into our computers, and that's less than 70 years old, really, in the digital realm. And to me, this brain preservation is just another step in that progression of write that best book we can, and maybe it's not going to be read by too many people, but it's out there, and it's easier and easier to preserve all of it